In a town well known for being tough and rugged, we like our teams and players to play that same way. Throughout the years, we have always gravitated towards a great defensive stand and punishing the opposing team. Well, this week's Top 5 takes a look at those players who love to battle for Philadelphia. It's the Top 5 defensive players of all time. Coming in at number 5, the defensive tackle who is a big teddy bear until you got him on the field, Jerome Brown.
Jerome Brown was big and tough and fun, and you knew they had that great front. This is what people forget. Everyone was more scared of Brown than they were Reggie, because they had to double team Reggie and let Brown right through.
Coming in at number 4, the linebacker that changed the Eagles from a losing franchise to NFC champs, Bill Bergey.
Bergey was just a rah-rah guy. He came from Cincinnati. Not many people knew about him, and he was just a guy that it was the epitome of what Philadelphia sports fans love. A guy who went out there and left it out on the field. The way he played, the intensity that he brought out onto the field. Bill Bergey was a Philly kind of guy, and the fans loved him here. And then unfortunately, when he got hurt and wasn't able to play at the highest level, was at the most important time when the Eagles went to the Super Bowl. But I think people will always remember Bill Bergey to this day as one of the great linebackers in the franchise history.
For a man that was built like a bear, I mean, he was 6'3", and he was about 250 pounds. But he had tremendous agility and athletic ability. Boy, he was a relentless player. I mean, he was a tough, relentless player.
Coming in at number 3, the safety with the best introduction out of the tunnel in team history, Brian Dawkins.
B-Doc was everything Jim Johnson wanted him to be, whether it was blitzing the quarterback on third down, covering some of the better receivers in the game, or taking out the #1 tight end in the NFC Championship game. That's right, Michael Vick's safety net at that point in time, 2004. With that hit against Algie Crumpler, that's a hit we'll never forget. Brian Dawkins has to be on that list as well.
Obviously, you cannot let Brian Dawkins not be on any top list that you have. Brian Dawkins, to me, epitomized Jim Johnson's defense, the turnaround of this organization when Andy Reid took over. And you talk about prototype for the Troy Palomalus and the Ed Reeds. Brian Dawkins was the prototype for those guys.
I love B-Doc. I think he represented so much, not just the big hits and the big plays and the big moments. It's the big heart. And every single fan can relate to what Brian Dawkins brought on the field, the intensity, the passion, the love to win, and also what he brought inside the huddle.
Every ounce of what I got is going to be laid out. Keep it to me. Give me the same in return.
The guy genuinely cared about each player.
Coming in at number 2, the last full-time two-way player in the NFL, Concrete Charlie, Chuck Bednarik.
When your name is Concrete Charlie, I think Frank Giffords still on the ground.
Chuck Bednarik was an absolute machine and a beast and probably the ultimate intimidator for his day.
He's an extraordinary player. George Allen, who was a great coach, wrote a book called Pro Football's 100 Greatest Players. And George Allen, who had no ties to Philadelphia, had no reason to be rooting for the Eagles, picked Chuck Bednarik as the greatest linebacker of all time, ahead of Dick Butkus, ahead of all of them. I mean, he picked Bednarik as #1. And I don't know that I would argue with that conclusion.
And taking the top spot this week, arguably the best defensive end in the history of the NFL, Reggie White.
Well, it's the minister of defense. Yes, it's Reggie White. 8 straight years. Every single year he put on an Eagles uniform, he had double-digit sacks.
Reggie White starts any list, as far as I'm concerned, when it comes to the Eagles. Reggie White was the most dominant force I've ever seen. I mean, it didn't matter if he was double-teamed, didn't matter where you put him, whether it was on the nose, whether it was on the end. He could do anything. He could literally lift up a 300-pound offensive lineman with one arm, and that told you all you needed to know about Reggie White.
I mean, Deacon Jones was great, and Gino Marchetti was great in his time. But I don't think I ever saw a defensive end that was as dominant as Reggie. It really kind of, if you want to take Reggie, I'm not going to argue with you. If you want to take Bednarik, I'm not going to argue with you. I mean, they both have their busts pretty much side by side, the Pro Football Hall of Fame, justly so. I never worry too much about who's the best. I mean, I'm perfectly content to just say they're both great and leave it at that.
So there you have it, your top 5 defensive players of all time. Let us know what you think on Twitter using @EaglesShows, #EaglesTop5.